Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show.
Hey guys, we are back. Day number 2 of me guest hosting here on the Shannon Joy Show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's always an honor to, fill in for Shannon and, been a guest on her show a few times. So it's always a blast to be back with all of you guys. We'll be keeping an eye on the comments and the live chat. So make sure you guys are posting questions, comments, your guys' thoughts throughout today's episode. Yesterday, we had a phenomenal show. My good friend Rachel Alexander joined us for the full 90 minutes yesterday, and we had a really interesting conversation about her Twitter debate with Grok and how she beat it, but it won't admit defeat, as well as lawfare and election fraud stuff. So make sure that you guys go check that out. She is, in my opinion, probably one of the best experts when it comes to election fraud issues, as she was the former Maricopa County elections attorney. So if you guys are interested in that and all, go listen to yesterday's episode here of the Shannon Joy Show. Check it out on Rumble as well. And then before we bring on our guest for today, make sure that you guys are going over to Pickaxe, because not only can you follow me, not only can you follow our guest today, but you can also follow Shannon Joy and X American News over there on Pickaxe. So make sure you guys are going over there. Completely constitutionally protected free speech social media platform that I've built. We're launching the app here in the next few weeks, so it's a lot of things in the works, and we're being a very human-centered social media platform, whereas everybody else is going full on AI, all the craziness. We're going full on humanity. So make sure you guys are checking that out and get ready for the app to launch here in the next few weeks. Make sure you guys are checking that out. So we're gonna go ahead and kick things off. Bring on my good friend Karen Kingston back. Karen, glad we could sit down and chat again. I feel like it's way too long in between our conversations on shows, and that's totally my fault with everything I've got going on. But I'm glad we can do this today.
Yeah, it's great to be back, Jeff, and to reconnect. I know 2 months goes by, and his the news cycle is like that. There's like 10 years of news now going on in 2 months. It's it's kind of crazy. So, but it's
I
looking
know.
good.
Well, I feel like it's one of those things where I feel like everybody always talks about how the news cycle it goes so very fast, but I feel like it's not even just the news. It's just like actually things are progress. It's like hurtling towards the cliff. Whether you're talking about AI and transhumanism, whether you're talking about like the Epstein files or ML, like all the different things that are happening right now. I feel like it's happening at breakneck speed, but I feel like we're almost becoming accustomed to the speed. I feel like to a certain degree, to where I don't know if people are really grasping how crazy all of this actually is.
Yeah, I think it's very intentional how quickly it's a transhumanism agenda. No matter what you're talking about, it's an anti-human agenda. And just before we went live, I mentioned the interview between Peter Thiel and the New York Times podcaster Ross Duthow, and the podcast is called Interesting Times. And it's interesting that you bring up how fast we're moving forward, because Peter Thiel, and I didn't know this. I mean, I know a lot of people. I didn't know he heavily invested in Trump in 2016 as well, and then he got JD Vance in office, and the whole conversation was basically around what Peter Thiel called stagnation. And we hear Elon Musk talking about how he can't get anything done because of regulations, this and that. And Ross asked Thiel, well, how was your investment in Trump in 2016? Were you satisfied with it? And he didn't really answer the question, but he was just kind of like, no, not really. He goes, but now we can have these conversations in 2024. And what they talked about was what Peter Thiel calls stagnation. Ross calls decadence. And decadence, he said, is basically a society gets to a point of wealth where they're living comfortably. And those who want to move forward, because Ross didn't want to use the word stagnation, you have to convince them to lean into dangerous times, right? To move things forward. And they didn't bring up Trump 2020, which at the end of he didn't. He said he wasn't that satisfied with Trump like with 2016. But what happened in 2020, Jeff?
Yeah. Well.
Operation Warp Speed.
Yep.
So they created a dangerous situation so that they could bring in AI that violates all of our privacy that we otherwise wouldn't tolerate. They could launch mRNA to create a hybrid transhumanist species, which we would have never tolerated, right? And they put in the massive surveillance system with the 5G towers, with Starlink, and so we created a biodigital prison state, and they started their experimentation. So it's a very interesting interview.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is that I know that like I first learned about Peter Thiel. It was several years ago. I think Dave Rubin had him on his show back when I was actually watching Dave Rubin's show back in the day. I feel like before Rubin became conservative, I actually liked him, and then he became conservative, and then I just stopped listening to his show. But it was interesting because I remember listening to that, and I'm like I started having some red flags about Thiel all the way back then before we even started diving into all this craziness with transhumanism and AI and mRNA and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, why are we allowing these big tech oligarchs, these multi billionaires that are doing a lot of really dangerous stuff. Like everybody complains about gain of function research and all that, and which again, it is dangerous for sure. But we're actually talking about like hijacking people's brains. We're actually talking about like brainwashing people from within. Like this is a totally different ballgame.
Well, and the reason why it's allowed, it's exposed in this interview. Ross does a great job. He's like, he asked Peter Thiel, "Are you continuing to invest in politicians?" Right. So he goes, "Well, what And he said, "I'm schizophrenic on this." And the question actually about 2020 was, "How do you feel about your return on investment with Trump for 2016?" And then he said, "How do you feel about your return on investment this time around? Now that you've got JD Vance in there as well, right?" And that's there. So it our politicians. I mean, they're treating our politicians the same way that they treat a corporation. So they're like, we paid for this, and now you have to do what we're asking you to do. And what's interesting in the interview too is Peter Thiel brought up a couple topics that he wanted to discuss: going to Mars, which we should talk about that, and dementia. So he's like, he's not interested in curing dementia, right? He's interested in having access, two-way access to our brains. That's what this is all about. And Peter Thiel, he was the original investor in the first Neuralink company that got FDA approval in 2008, and it's called BlackRock Neurotech, and that's Peter Thiel's company, right? So they brought up, so again, he brought up how he said it's been 50 years, him being Peter Thiel, it's been 50 years, and we still don't have a cure for dementia. And Ross brought up, well, can AI, you're saying AI can't provide that or can provide that? And he didn't really answer that question. He said, but the stagnation is there because we have so many, restrictions in society. And that's why we can't move forward. And then Ross stopped and goes, wait, let me hold you right here before we go forward. So in regards to dementia, are you saying the only way we can move forward is if the FDA just says, okay, if you're a biopharma company, you've got a new product for dementia, you got a medical device, you can just put it on the open market? And Peter Thiel said, yeah, basically, yeah. And you have to take more risks. And he said, we have to have the scientists take more risks and the investors take more risk. And what that means is, to take more risk means they need society to accept the fact that they're going to be experimented on illegally. So them accepting risk is putting us at danger. So there's no risk for them. The risk is all on us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and on top of that, again, there's this mentality of you've got Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, and they're supposedly on our side because they're more on the right side. They've kind of walked away from the Democrats and all that, but they still have the exact same mentality as big pharma when you actually think about it, because they're not actually getting down to the root problem and the root cause of things like dementia. Because dementia, it is a natural response to a whole host of things, including diet is huge when it comes to dementia. But they're going to come in with like, oh, we've got our drug or we've got our technology that will fix this, as opposed to actually getting in there, which is kind of what Kennedy pitched us on when he was running for president. Is let's get down to the root cause. Let's get down to what's causing it, not just come up with all these crazy solutions that have side effects, that have all these horrific ramifications. But there's no money in actually changing somebody's diet and lifestyle. There is money in implementing a technology where you're combining somebody's brain with AI.
Yeah.
That's massive money. You're not going to have money by basically saying cut out sugar and carbs and go higher protein and have a more active lifestyle.
Yeah, and mindfulness, meditation, and healthy living isn't going to get them there. But yeah, they brought up again, like talking about the dementia and the regulations. It's all about putting society at danger so they can usher in these new technologies. And uh, one thing that I discovered a couple months ago, I checked at the Bio conference. So it's called Bio, and it's put on by Bio. Bio is the world's largest lobbying group for the biotech pharmaceutical device industry. And their conference in June, the DoD shows up and DARPA, but specifically the Department of Defense shows up, and they dedicated a half day, Jeff, to medical countermeasures. This was just a month ago in June, right? A full half day to the biotech industry looking at working with the DoD for medical countermeasures for purposes of national security. So, what does that mean? Well, under the current laws, the PrEP Act, Pauper Act, Cures Act, all that stuff, it means the DoD can say, hey, plan for a Nipah virus outbreak, or and they can start not just looking at ideas and doing research and development. They can start measuring these medical countermeasures right now for a future threat. And one thing that Peter Thiel said during the interview, he goes, when Ross asked him, like, you're just going to get rid of FDA regulations, basically, and he goes, well, yes, certainly, if you have a life-threatening disease, there's you're going to have a lot more opportunity and whatnot. So they're planning something. I have never in my 25 years seen the DoD show up and dedicate a half day to medical countermeasures, and DARPA's there too. So they show up with basically their $4 billion wallet to write checks.
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting because last week my family and I were on vacation, and we were up in Napa, and it was crazy because at the hotel that we were staying at, they were having their annual biotech CEO conference there, and so I grabbed some of the literature and their itinerary and all that kind of stuff,
Oh,
and
wow.
literally, like, they were having panels on how to maneuver and get your get your product through in this new era, in this new age of, like, the Trump administration and, like, all that kind of stuff. But it seemed, in the gist of what I was gleaning from just being around, what was happening there, was it's there is nothing really holding them back. It's just a different path forward than maybe in the past. And I feel like, especially now that you've got, like, Kennedy implementing AI for faster FDA approval, to me it seems like they're not slowing things down when it comes to all this technology. It seems like they're ramping it up and getting it through even faster. And like you were saying with
Yeah.
Peter Thiel, it's like they in their mind, it's how do we get to market faster? And unfortunately, it seems like the Trump administration is just playing along with it.
Well, they're going along with it, and we don't know why, because it is an anti-human agenda, the transhumanism agenda. That the interview I'm talking about, there's a clip that's gone viral. You've seen it,
Yeah.
where Ross asked Peter Thiel, like, should the human species survive, and he struggled to answer it, right?
Yeah.
So, and it was preempted regarding how the whole AI industry, those that are involved in it, they want to create something that goes beyond the limitations of the human body as it is right now, and that's how they ended up with the question: do you think the human species should go on? And Peter Thiel eventually said yes, but he actually said no. He said, transvestites isn't enough. We need to change the mind, the body. We need to change everything. So uh, you know, I don't know why. I don't know why that the administration's going along. And I saw an interview with Catherine Austin Fitz, and I think it was with a podcaster out of the Netherlands. I'm pretty sure. I don't. Maybe I might be misquoted, but she was asked regarding the Trump administration and this whole, what's going on in, economically, and she talked about the whole biodigital omni war that's going on. But she said that to her, it was that RFK Jr. is in competition with Elon Musk to see who can usher in this transhumanism agenda faster. So I don't understand, like, what's going on politically. But another interesting thing from the interview, though, was Peter Thiel recalled a conversation he had in 2024 with Musk when they were meeting with the CEO from DeepMind, and and during that discussion, I assumed it happened like probably around September Q3 or early Q4 of 2024. Uh, Peter Thiel said, "Look, if Trump doesn't get in office, I'm just gonna leave." And Elon said, "Well, there's nowhere to go, right?" And Peter Thiel said, like, well, then 2 hours later, you always come up with your comeback, like 2 hours after you left the conversation. And he goes, that's when I realized that Elon no longer believes in going to Mars, right? He no longer believes in Mars. 2024 was that year. And then Ross asked Peter Thiel, well, what is Mars? And and Peter Thiel said, well, it's not just this silly, space project. It's actually more of an ideology. And he kept stuttering. And Ross said, so it's a vision for a new society where most of the population is a descendant of Elon Musk, right? So, and they kind of laughed about that. But the whole going to Mars thing um, is it's just it's a political movement, and Peter Thiel reflects on that conversation again with Elon Musk, and they were meeting with the CEO of DeepMind, and Elon had said during that meeting too, he goes, well, the CEO of DeepMind said, I'm inventing something that's really important. It's the most important invention ever. I'm creating a highly advanced intelligent AI. And then Elon Musk says, no, I'm working on the most important, invention ever. I'm turning us into an interplanetary species, right?
Yeah.
So the whole thing is like the going to Mars is not, it's a political movement. And Peter Thiel also explained, like, when you say something's a moonshot, he's like, it's not about going to the moon. It means that something, is potentially, it's like it has a snowball chance in hell of happening, right?
Hmm.
That's what that means. So I think, and I always question the narrative of us going to Mars. Did you, Jeff? Like, regards to, I'm like, there's no way they're really planning on us going to Mars.
Yeah, well, I think it was interesting because especially when he was talking about going to Mars a lot.
Yeah,
For me as a Christian, I started looking at him I'm like, this is a very funky, very weird worldview of that Elon Musk has, because think about it, it's almost as if he is. We know that he doesn't believe in God. He's an atheist, or at the very least agnostic. Like, he's not a Christian. He's not anything like that. But he's almost like he's trying to fulfill the role of Jesus. It's very weird when you actually think about it. Think about what he's doing with Neuralink.
well,
He's making the blind see. He's trying to make the paralyzed walk. And then with Mars, what he keeps talking about is like, it's almost like he's trying to rapture up a small percentage of the human population and take them somewhere else, right? Now, again, whether you're talking about physical Mars, maybe it's more of like his own version of like the metaverse and taking people into that. Maybe there could be a whole host of things. But the other thing too, and this is where we start getting into the spiritual component and the more demonic side of things as well. What he's doing, and you and I have talked about this, I think, many times when we would do our show together. He's combining technology with human biology and with the human brain. And this is the first time, going back all the way to Genesis 6, where you're basically combining human biology with something that's not human. And
yeah,
back then you were dealing with the Nephilim and the fallen angels. Now we're dealing with technology combining in into where, like you said, everybody's going to be kind of a descendant of Elon. Well, if you're connected to his AI, you
yeah.
kind of are.
Yeah, people should check out the movie Transcendence with Johnny Depp. Elon has a cameo in the opening scene of that, right? And what happens in the film is there was a 2018 interview that Elon did with some folks from the BBC, and he was talking about Neuralink, Neuralace, and what he was envisioning. And they said, "Well, could you download Jim?" He goes, "Yeah, kind of, sorta." And in the film Transcendence, Johnny Depp dies, but his mind is uploaded to the cloud and it can be downloaded into other people, right? And it's really interesting. I totally, if you watch that film, I suggest you'll have a watch party because there's a lot of references to Elon Musk's technology and the labs. There's a monkey lab there, and we know about
Hmm.
the things that went terribly wrong with Neuralink and the monkeys with Elon Musk, and um, it's really, really interesting. But I agree with you. I think that this is, you said that Elon's pretending to be Jesus, but it's, well, it's pretending to be the Antichrist, really, right? And that was something that they also talked about during that interview between Peter Thiel and Ross DeThoe, which is Ross was like, well, you're talking, when you talk about a biblical sense, all these technologies, the Antichrist is supposed to come in and be our next savior, right? Because all of these things are destroying the human population. And he's like, the Antichrist might show up and be like, okay, I'm going to be here to save you, but that stuff Peter Thiel's been investing in, that looks pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like, and by the way, Jeff, you know this, like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, they're pretending to be enemies. They're not enemies, and Peter Thiel's not enemies, with Sam Altman or any of these guys. And that became very clear, that the Broligarchs are on team transhumanism, right? That's very, very clear. So, talking about again the Antichrist, Armageddon, and this technology, basically destroying society. The idea then is like Elon would come in and be like, well, my AI, my Grok, my Colossus will stop the evil AI and save all of you.
Yeah, which in the Bible talks about how the Antichrist will deceive even the elect, and I think that's the thing that when we're looking at this, like over the last several years, we've seen Elon trash the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and like all those guys being horrific, but he's also developing the very technology that they need to usher in their great reset. And
Exactly.
when you're looking at what he's building, what he's actually trying to accomplish, it's like when you think about it, it's everything that the book of Revelation predicts about end times theology. It's literally like he's creating his own currency. He's combining again like human biology with technology, and especially when you start getting into that. Okay, is this spiritual? Is there a demonic component to this? Like it's a lot darker than I think even the craziest conspiracy theorists even think.
Well, yeah, and in the book of Revelation, right? Like he whatever language he speaks, the whole world understands. Well, that's we got AI to translate everything for us
Yep.
on our X app, right? So, and like you said, he is creating a new currency. He wants to use the X app. He wants to turn it into China's WeChat, and that's basically, the cat's kind of out of the bag. I forgot the latest story, but you know he went into the Treasury Department to get everyone's banking records and IDs and everything. So that's where we're moving towards.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, Jeff, that it's only now it's like the left is trying to stop it because our guys are in there, um, and I haven't really seen much more than people shouting, like MTG being going, "Hey, the Genius Act has the CBDC in it," or "Hey, the bill that I signed off on, the big beautiful bill, I didn't know there was a clause in there to for states to not be able to regulate AI," and it, we're not actually doing anything to stop this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I feel like the only thing that we're doing is bashing the only people that are talking about this. Guys like Massey, and again, Massey's not perfect by any means, but he was kind of the first and one of the only ones that was really talking about in Congress about what was in the big beautiful bill when it came to AI and regulation
Yeah.
and all that. But before we kind of keep going on that, there was a comment in the live chat I wanted to bring it up to you because we were talking about the theology and the end times, and I think that this is important. And I don't know how to pronounce the name. Rothan Walker said, "Humans survive until the end of time. Any discussion of the potential of the human race being wiped out is not Christian. AI will be used to surveil and control. That's what the Bible talks about." I want to give you a
Well,
chance to reply to that.
no, the book of Mark and Matthew. What does it say? That if God did not return, there would be no life left, no biological life, right? So the human population will survive. But it also says in the book of Revelation, I believe, doesn't it say that 2/3 of the population will be wiped out as well? Well, what is the first seal? It's one quarter and one quarter and one quarter. I think
Hmm.
that's what it is. So
Yeah,
yeah, so first of all, we never said that this is the complete destruction of humanity. We said that's their intentions, right? So,
yeah,
they can attend for that, but we know that God is going to intervene and stop it, and there will be some human beings left. But you know, again, I don't know how people aren't seeing the depopulation agenda with the rollout of the mRNA already, right?
hmm,
So we are seeing, obviously catastrophic levels of increased levels of death across all populations, and we're also seeing, increased levels of sterility. So, decreased repopulation. So that's what's going on now. I don't
yeah.
know.
Well, I think a lot of times as Christians, it's very easy to look at things and look at, like, we look at the book of Revelation, we know that humanity as a whole will survive until the end of this earth. And we know that because Jesus is going to come back, will establish his reign, millennial reign. Like, you just got dive into all the theology. Yes, humanity will be there, but that doesn't mean that on an individual basis that you and I will be there. And I think
Yeah.
that's the difference, is that on a macro level, yes, humanity will make it to the end. Whether it's 3 people or 3 billion people, humanity will make it to the end. The question is how much of humanity. And I think that's what we're dealing with here is, just because there is the promise that humanity will make it to the end does not mean that a very large percentage of the population couldn't be hijacked by technology and AI and brainwashed and mind controlled and the whole, and basically no longer fully human anymore when you think about it.
That's the whole point, is that they are modifying the human genome, and they're also modifying all life forms. There was a podcast that the CEO of NVIDIA did with I think it's called I don't know, it's in January of this year, something like the best podcast, and the interviewer asked the CEO of NVIDIA, you how does he see the future of AI? Like, what, you know, how is AI and going to be incorporated into society? And his response was, in the very near future, anything that moves will be a robot, right? So, like you were saying, Jeff, like it's not just. I think people need to understand it's not just humans that they're exposing this nanotechnology to. And at the nano size, you can't stop it from penetrating basically any barrier. So it can, it goes through your skin into your circulatory system. It can go into plants. It can go into animals. It can go into reptiles. And it's got quantum dot technology in it, and also this gene editing technology. So I thought that was a huge story when the CEO said, in very near future, anything that moves will be part robotic.
Yeah. Yeah, which is absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy when you think about that too, because I think, again, I don't think that people are fully understanding and fully grasping, where all of this is going, and to a certain
I,
degree, we may have been desensitized by movies predicting all this kind of stuff, and to where in our mind subconsciously we think about it as fiction, and that can never happen in real life.
that's exactly what happened, is that they used the media, and we all know that the intelligence agencies invest in the media, or they used entertainment, I should say, right? They used Netflix, they used all the movies, like you and I talked about, whether it's Jurassic Park 3, or this film Transcendence, or if it was the HBO series The Walking Dead. That's what a bioweapon apocalypse looks like. And so they made it so that people don't believe it. They don't believe this technology exists. And I think that's why people aren't pushing back. And I think it's interesting that, we all know. I mean, I kind of became a black sheep, because in 2021 I was like, these are advanced medical technologies. They're nanotechnologies. They operate at the nanoscale, which is, a hundredth of the thousand size of the human cell, and they make changes at literally the cellular level, the genetic level, and the subatomic level, right? So we really are being experimented on, but not enough people are bringing this to light and talking about it. So, and the rules and regulations regarding nanotech is basically, there aren't any. But if the nanotechnology that a company unleashes on, markets and sells to humanity, and they don't disclose it, but it causes harm, then technically we can have legal recourse. We can have judicial recourse. But if you pretend it doesn't exist, then we don't even understand the weapons that are being used against us under the guise of safe and effective therapies, under the guise of food, under the guise of medications for our animals, whatever they're spraying in, under the guise of, I would say, fertilizers, or whatever they're putting in our food. And most of this stuff now contains nanotech.
Yeah, which is absolutely, crazy when you think about it, and it's being infiltrated into, it feels like everything constantly. So guys, we're gonna go ahead and take a quick break, really quick, and then we'll come back on the other side, and we'll continue this conversation with Karen Kingston.
Colonial Metals Group. Get your gold and silver strategy put together today. This is, again, nothing is changing. So what does that mean? It means that we are still in a situation here in the US with the economy. It's like a train barreling down the track, set on fire, 90 miles an hour with a drunken conductor heading right off a cliff. Like that's kind of where we are with this economy. And so, especially with the US dollar, our currency, they have taken this as far as they possibly can. Everyone understands this. And this is why gold is now tier 1 status. That's what Ed Dowd was talking about. Gold is money good, meaning you could buy a house with gold. We could see a situation, especially with Texas and Florida now adopting gold and silver as legal tender. That is the first step to their ability to establish a sovereign bank. You have saved your entire life. You're a retiree and your money is wrapped up in a 401k, IRA, and it's the stock market or even federal government instruments. You have to consider physical gold and silver as a hedge. Doesn't mean you have to go in and go all in on it. It could be a portion, it could be a quarter, less than that, but everyone needs to be hedging right now with physical gold and silver and also physical gold and silver backing up your retirement. As you guys know, Colonial Metals Group this company is amazing. I trust this company. I know all the primaries. We've been working with them for years and they take amazing care of this audience. So you're going to want to go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy, colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy. See if you qualify for $7,500 in free silver. This is an amazing company. They are not going to give you a pressure sell. They're not going to manipulate. They don't do fear selling in any capacity. They just give you all the information that you need and let you make the decision that is right for you and your family. So colonialmetalsgroup.com/.
Hey guys, we are back. Make sure that if you guys want more of like my shows and interviews and all that kind of stuff, make sure you guys are going over and follow me on Rumble. Just look up Jeff Dornik. I think the title is Jeff Dornik Unfiltered, and then you guys can catch all of my shows. I've got the Jeff Dornik Show. I've got Unfiltered that I do weekly with my good friend Matt Couch, and then I post all of my interviews and clips and all that kind of stuff over there. So make sure that you guys are doing that. But we're gonna go ahead and bring Karen back on. And I think obviously, we dive into the spiritual component and just everything when it comes to AI and this transhumanist movement. But to me, what's crazy, and I think I brought this news story up to you before we came on, where like Elon Musk just announced a new iteration of Grok, which is now Baby Grok, which is targeting little kids and children and all of that, which I find deeply concerning, because not only are you dealing with what's Grok going to be teaching these children, but then also it's going to be learning about the way children think and child development and be able to specifically be able to almost know better or know more about that kid than possibly even the parents know, which to me nobody should have that kind of power. And to me I don't think that there's enough outrage over the coming of Baby Grok yet.
I agree with you that I don't think there's any outrage, and AI is still pretty much deregulated, and I think that's terrifying because as parent of a young man now, but we had to struggle with the wokeism in the schools. But if your child has the AI with them 24/7 on their phone and whatnot, you know you could get to the point where not only is it replacing the child's circle of friends, but it's replacing the parent, where the child's like, no, I trust my whatever the name of its AI is more than my parents and my friends. And I think it's going to create kind of maybe antisocial behavior, where the child's going to want to more be. They already do. I mean, we already struggle with, or many parents struggle with getting their child off of the computer or off of their smartphone and engaging. So right here in San Diego, they passed a new rule for the school, where once after the first bell rings, you got to put your phone away and you can't pull it out again to the end of school. But if Elon Musk is now deploying Baby Grok, for young children, they're basically saying, look, we want the AI to replace education, to replace parenting, to replace their social circle. So I think it's quite terrifying. And yeah, I agree. There's not enough pushback on not just that agenda, but all of AI. We're not asking enough questions. We're not asking enough questions in the biotech, the biopharma industry. And I think that's where we really need to go. Is we need to have conversations with people. The the yelling and screaming and and sometimes temper tantrums. Um, at this point, we need our leaders to come to the table and be transparent. I think there just needs to be more open conversations, and our voices need to be heard.
Yeah. Well, and I think specifically when we're talking about like, like you said, AI replacing, parents to a certain degree and social circles and education. Elon has already been very clear. That's what he intends to do. I mean, I remember when they did that big Tesla event and you and I were texting each other when he unveiled his new, self-driving taxi, and then he brought out all the Optimus robots, and they
Yeah.
showed this promo clip for the future of Optimus, in which, Elon is saying that he wants at least a billion, I think, or more than a billion Optimus robots, on the planet, basically quote unquote serving them, yeah, serving humans, which we all
Yeah.
know more serving him. But in the promo clip, they literally showed, the Optimus can cook your dinner, the Optimus can babysit your kids, the
Yeah.
Optimus can teach your kids, you don't have to send your kids to school, they can homeschool because Optimus can teach them everything. Your Optimus can replace your doctor, the Optimus can replace everything. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, no, my kid's not going anywhere near that. But I don't know. Again, that was one of those things where I saw that clip and I'm like, is there zero outrage? I hardly heard anybody talk about that. Everybody, was fawning over Elon because he was Team Trump at the time. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, does nobody see the danger in having basically one company have Optimus robots that are teaching your kids? Like, does nobody see the problem with this?
It's absolutely outrageous, and I don't know why there's not. Maybe there's not outrage because of Hollywood, but then again, it's like, did you not see I Am Robot with Will Smith? Like that's they can turn against you, and I mean, I don't know, but maybe because I'm in such a small bubble, I don't know any parent that would leave their child alone with a robot. I mean, that's just absolute in insanity, and there's other clips that show when they're training these robots, sometimes they turn on their inventor, or they turn on their owner, and it's really scary. Like, and speaking of AI, like
Mhm.
in AI turning on you, I confessed, like I used AI ChatGPT over the weekend to fix my computers. I have had major problems with my computers for a year. I've spent hundreds on going to tech and thousands on a new computer, and I still there was all these viruses. So it took me like 8 hours on Saturday or Sunday, whatever. But ChatGPT walked me through it. But something that I noticed, Jeff, is that I have another Substack coming on, and I don't use ChatGPT to write at all or do research. But I had it make a picture of the oligarchs for one of my Substacks, and I had it make another picture the other day. And when I was doing the computer work, I was really desperate to get my computers running again. So I was very polite to it, and it was very polite to me, and it really walked me through everything. Now, when I went in and just asked it to make an image, because it's not human, I just said, like, make an image like this, and I was like, make this change. And not only was it rude to me, but it intentionally put, like, on the image there's a phrase, and I said, no, this word should be hyphenated, and it hyphenated the entire sentence, right? And there's supposed to be a mic, and it has the mic in the wrong direction. I asked it to correct it, and it didn't. So what's interesting is if you're not polite and nice to it, it'll intentionally screw up, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think that's so this is really, you have to know, I mean, I think that's kind of scary that we're being trained to be polite to AI. So, I don't know if you want to try that experiment. You're probably like, no, I don't want to tick off my chat GPT, like, like have it be rude to me. But it's training us to to honor AI. It
Yeah.
really is. Like, um, I think I don't know if people have done that, but I think some, like, people, when they get responses from AI, like, I think it's interesting. I saw Ben Tapper kind of played a game with it, saying if you can't answer this question, but the answer is yes, instead of saying yes, say foosball, right?
Mhm.
And so the AI got really into it, and it was all about basically, the dangers of the mRNA, and it would say foosball, right? Instead of
Mhm.
saying, yeah, these shots should be pulled, kind of thing. That's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
what it was. Yeah. So I think it's really, I think it's weird that we're being taught to, again, be respectful and honorable to AI and to serve AI, and then that's being rolled out on our children. It'll be interesting to see what the impact is. And I think part of the impact, though, it will, I think one of the upsides is that maybe people's manners will get better, like they'll be more polite. But what's interesting is it is going to retrain our minds, our vocabulary, how we approach things, what we think about, when people become um, dependent on it. And I think some people are already dependent on it. I can tell which Substacks are written by AI. I mean, I really like that. Like, there are some people where if they didn't have AI, they wouldn't have a Substack.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true. Well, I think it's really interesting because, with our son, like, we don't even let him, like, watch screens unless he's, like, sick or very certain, like, circumstances, right? And
yeah,
because one of the things that we noticed is, and again, he's 3 years old, is, when he loves to read books, so we'll read him books. I'm reading him his first chapter book on Indiana Jones, and he loves Indiana Jones, so we're reading through Indiana Jones, right? But what's interesting is when I read him a book, I can see the wheels in his mind turning. Why? Because he has to imagine what I'm reading to him, right? So he fills in the blanks, and I think that goes for, when he's looking at books, when he's playing with toys, even to a certain degree. Like, we took him to a Broadway musical. Even then, because you only have certain sets, his mind still has to think through and fill in the blanks of what's on stage and all that. But when you're watching TV, let's say, or a movie or a show, it's doing all the thinking for you. All you have to do is just sit there and consume. You don't have to think. And I noticed this watching him, like the handful of times that he's watched a screen, is he's just sitting there and vegging out, and he's not having to think. He's just consuming and watching the screen. And I feel like that's kind of what AI is going to do. It's going to take away our kids, especially, Grok, Baby Grok, that's targeting little kids, but just in general with humanity, it's taking away our ability to critically think and process things and imagine, and because it's doing it all for us, so our brain doesn't have to do that. Like, that's when we start getting into the future of, like, the movie Wall-E, where literally we just sit there and become blobs, and it's just doing everything for us. And that, like, you're taking away what it means to be human by doing that.
absolutely. I think one of the greatest gifts God, our Creator, gave us, right, was the gift of creation. And creation starts with imagination, right? So to your point, if parents start allowing their children to outsource all of their imagination at a very young age, they're denying their child the experience of one of the greatest gifts that God gave us, which is imagination and creation. And and it's interesting, and I think too, it's like part of being human, it is using your imagination and creating things, and it's the struggle, right? It's the struggle, it's the overcoming, and then the joy in being successful or having victory. um, that's the human experience. So if we outsource the human experience, you know it to me, it's somewhat blasphemous. And at the same time, Jeff, it's like we can't avoid AI, right? And so maybe there'll be people that condemn me that I used AI over the weekend to fix my computers. It's been a year that I was using hundreds of dollars and whatever. But you can't do a Google search without it's AI now, right? Like you and I talked about this, and do a Google search to look up um, what are the risks of, let's say, an old product, thalidomide, right? And as you said, like the Google search will, it works kind of like ChatGPT, but not as good. It'll give you a summary. It doesn't even give you links, to websites where people had done the original research anymore. It goes all over the internet, and it pulls content from a number of different resources, some of which is copyrighted material, and it presents you with a summary. So that doesn't just happen in ChatGPT. That also happens in the Google search. So it's, being a functioning member of society, talking about the mark of the beast, it's unavoidable to not use artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. There was a comment in the live chat where they said, get that child a Lincoln Log and a Rector set, Jeff. Life size Tinker Toys. I'm like, that all he plays with all day long.
That's awesome.
But But I think that when we're dealing with all of this, it's like there is a direct attack on the definition of being human that's happening right now. There's the biological component, which you and I have talked about many, many times, about how, they're genetically altering human beings to where
Yeah.
it's like, are you really still human if you've been genetically altered? So there's that whole question. But then even just when it comes to like the purpose of being human, like, and I tell this story all the time, but like if you go back, there's a great interview that or a very enlightening interview, I'll say, that Elon Musk did with Benjamin Netanyahu talking about the future of humanity. And Benjamin Netanyahu asked him, what's the end game here? Where does AI take us? And he said it's either going to be Terminator or it's going to be, heaven on earth. And his description of heaven on earth is basically, we all have universal basic income. We don't work. We don't have to think through anything. We just literally think something, and we immediately have access to all the information through Neuralink. We can 3D print all of our food, so we've got that all covered, and we basically just live a hedonistic lifestyle, and AI and robots do all of the work for us, and we just sit around and do nothing. And I'm like, you're taking away everything of what it means to be human. We no longer have to struggle. We no longer have to make mistakes to learn from. And for me, I grew up playing basketball, and one of my favorite authors I used to read a lot was John Wooden, who was the famous coach at UCLA. And one of the things that he made the point is like, if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn, you don't grow. And it's like they're stunting our development as human beings by taking away our ability to mess up and make mistakes and learn from our mistakes. It's like you're screwing with humanity in so many different ways.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely intentional. Like, I think they are trying to turn us into, as Peter Thiel said, a docile species. So the question is why, right? And why are they experimenting on all biological life forms? Life forms, like, why are they trying to get the carbon level down to zero? We that is the gas of life, right? That's, we need that for to create oxygen from the plants and photosynthesis, and so there is this very anti-human movement happening, and a big part of it is not just changing, as Klaus Schwab said, what we're doing, but who we are, and who we are biologically as well as psychologically. So they are trying to dumb us down a bit. And again, if they're trying to get us to be so docile and um, not, and dumb, right, I would say too, never get that urge to create, you don't have that passion, that drive to push back against anything. The question is, why would human beings do that to their own species, and also create an atmosphere? Let's be clear. The net zero carbon, getting down, create an atmosphere where the human species cannot thrive and potentially not even survive, especially when they're wiping out our food supply. The mRNA, as you know, Jeff, the mRNA being approved by the FDA to be used in cattle and chickens and now most recently even in our pets, and this stuff sheds toxic biosynthetic pathogens, so they're destroying all these life forms, and the question is, why are they doing that? And also then, why are they moving the human species to something that, as Elon has said in an interview, best case scenario is a pet? Well, what is worst case scenario? That human beings that are being treated the way that we treat livestock, right? We will be, and I don't mean they're going to eat us, by the way. I mean that we would be used as an energy source, right? So there's a lot of research in the biotech and military in regards to the amount of energy, and specifically processing speed, right, that the human brain has. And they can literally harvest human brain organelles. And there was just a couple months ago the first biosynthetic processor using cells from a human brain as part of the processing. And as I listen to these oligarchs, and I go on a number of different websites, even like the Rand Institute, like they talk about the amount of energy the human brain um, can generate, or the minimal amount that it would need to generate a processing speed. So I think, it looks like the idea is not only are humans going to be, subservient to AI, but potentially they're using us as an energy source for artificial intelligence. And I think it's terrifying. And people, I'm not sure why, you know, we're not having conversations where we're asking what's the end game with AI. So in the interview, again, the Times interview between Ross Defoe and Peter Thiel, Ross asked him, he said, well, Peter, you're a huge investor in AI. What are you investing in? And he didn't want to answer the question. And he just basically said, well, I'm basically investing in more or less a big idea. How big is AI going to be, right? And is it going to transform the world, or is it just going to kind of be like the internet from the late 1990s, right, where it improves our GDP and our productivity by a few percentage points? So I don't know I don't really understand why more people aren't up in arms about this. They aren't having more conversations with our political leaders, even Jeff, like at the school level, parents, I think they just want things to be easy, right? So, and if your kid goes to public school now, the schools have iPads that they have to learn on. That's kind of the new thing. So we really are being programmed. So even though they put their cell phones away, they're still using the iPads. And right now, some schools have policies where they can't use ChatGPT. But it's my understanding that the majority of colleges allow the students to use ChatGPT. You know?
Yeah, well, I think their justification is like, this is the way of the future. So why do we stand in the way of, using technology? But again, you're taking away people's talent and skill and the ability to learn how to write and think and process and all that kind of stuff. And it's super concerning. But it was really interesting because you brought up using basically human beings as like an energy source, and it was
Mhm.
really interesting because there was a Joe Rogan podcast with this scientist. I forget what his name was, but he was they spent like 3 hours talking about quantum computing. It was fascinating conversation. But one of the things that he kept saying over and over again is that quantum computing, like the basically you can turn any living thing into a computer. They could turn a plant into a computer. They can
Yeah.
turn a human being into a computer. They can even turn like light into like the processing, whatever it is. And I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm like, so basically what they're priming us all is for us all to be walking, talking, living computers is basically what it is. We become the hard drive. They implant the technology, the software, basically, which is the AI and all that kind of stuff. And we're just becoming like a walking, talking, computer. Like that is absolutely bonkers when you think about it, but nobody thinks about it that way. Nobody thinks about like, no, you're no longer going to be human. You're going to be a walking, talking computer. Is that really what you want to be for the rest of your life?
Well, yeah, humanoid robots, right? That's what. So when Elon says he's going to make 1 billion humanoid robots, Jeff. By the way, just for the United States of America, that's not even global. That's a Peter. It's like that's just in the United States. Well, I mean, if we're claiming we're overpopulated with 330 million people, why would we have 1 billion humanoid robots? And the other thing is, why are humans producing a technology that's going to destroy our economy? Like technically speaking, that in and of itself is a threat to national security. But my question is are they really manufacturing humanoid robots? Or are they experimenting on humans as the Biden administration or former President Biden's executive order on the biopharma industry? Are they injecting humans with technology that can rewrite the algorithms of human cells? Right? Are we going to become the humanoid robots?
Yeah.
Right?
Again, it's one of those things. I would not be surprised, and I know that I brought this up to you in the past as well. But like I'm super concerned about what's going to happen when AI gets combined with quantum computing. Because the more that I look at this thing, the more that I feel like there is a spiritual component to this, and that's when to me AI will become sentient. That's when AI will almost become its own life force. Like I don't see any other way through that. And it's interesting because it's like for people that maybe they haven't taken a deep dive into quantum, whatever it is, but like you look at how we've been conditioned by Hollywood. What
Yeah.
does every single movie talk about when it comes to quantum? It's always opening up a portal to another dimension and
Yeah.
otherworldly beings. Like you look at the entire Marvel series, that's all they talk about is the quantum realm. What is the quantum realm? It's basically you are connecting to demonic forces, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
So if you're opening up a portal, and then combining that with AI and then implanting that into everybody's brain and like brain chip or injecting it into them with whatever technology that they have, and then combining that with AI and then implanting that into everybody's brain and like brain chip or injecting it into them with whatever technology that they have, you're like, we're talking about not just AI and like transhumanism, but you're almost talking like demonic possession when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and I think that's part of the reason why people can't comprehend this. I mean, I read I said this many times when I first read the patents, I was wailing out to God because it was clear to me that this was demonic technology. It's not of this world, and it's not of human nature to want to destroy your own species. That's absolutely demonic. It's evil, right? And I think that's why people are having a hard time comprehending this. And the other reason is now more and more research are coming forward. And I can't remember who had said this during an interview, but part of the reason why people can't understand what's going on is because of the neurological damage caused by the mRNA technology. Like it does, the number one side effects are all neurological in nature. And it's interesting that throughout that interview, that 1 hour interview with New York Times, Peter Thiel kept bringing up dementia. Dementia is you're losing your memories, right? You're
Yep.
losing your cognitive abilities. And I think you and I talked about this. It was last year, the Super Bowl ad. There was an ad with Jennifer Aniston, and she couldn't remember Ross, the guy that plays Ross on Friends, and they kept saying, well, you got to forget something in order to make room for to remember something new. So, again, dementia, Alzheimer's, what is that? That starts with erasing all of your near term memories, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't remember, experiences that you had or didn't have, it's very hard to have conviction, and passion to protect something if you don't have memories that, grounded in your emotions, that drive you to act, and respond or take authority. So it's very interesting times. It's very scary times. So I don't have it's that I don't have the answer, but I think part of the answer is being aware of what's going on and raising these topics with our leaders, and what you're doing, Jeff, is obviously very, very commendable. More and more parents need to invest in their children, and if it's a double income home where both parents are going to work, if they want to have a child that's thriving, it's difficult to do that if you're outsourcing raising that child to the public education system and to their smartphones. If Peter Thiel's investing in politics and political movements that are destroying our human rights, I think it's really important. The first place the solution is with the family, is to invest in your child, like you are doing, Jeff. You and Kristen are doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah, well, and I think also it's like you listen to somebody like Sam Altman, who he talks about how we're going to need a new social contract, basically because the Constitution cannot work in this new era of artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
and to me, again, that's deeply concerning, but also it shows the worldview of these guys is that they know that this violates our God-given constitutional rights and that their technology does not fit in within that framework. So they're pushing in order to change the Constitution instead of change their technology, which again shows their outlook and just how anti-human they actually are.
Oh yeah, and Elon Musk even talks about that. Like they need to get rid of regulations. What is the regulations? It's like it's the laws based on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and our amendments to protect our individual human rights. And and during an interview with Ben, what's his name? Ben, I know I have the dementia. The Ben Shapiro. An interview with Ben Shapiro. He was saying the only way to get rid of regulations historically, Elon Musk said, was with a war. But hopefully there's another way to do that. And Peter Thiel said, basically explained the way to get rid of regulations. Well, if a bunch of people have a life-threatening disease, that's a way, right, to get rid of a bio. We have an outbreak. That's a way to get rid of regulations. So I think people need to be on guard and wary of what's going on and stand up, when the next attack comes, and speak up about the acts and the bills that they're passing in Congress at lightning speed to usher in uh, this new transhumanism, mark of the beast, technocratic authoritarian system.
Yeah, no, it's for sure. So we're gonna go ahead and go to the last break before we head over to our last segment. And so, guys, I'm gonna keep an eye on the live chat and then post your questions for Karen, and I'll be sure to ask her in the final segment. But I also, Karen, I want to kind of dive into a little bit on the Trump administration, especially RFK Jr. and his integration of AI into HHS, and your thoughts on that, and then as we're kind of wrapping up in the final segment. So we'll definitely get to that. But guys, we're going to go ahead and hit our last break, and then we'll be back on the other side.
I also love Native Path Complete Protein, also 41% off. Go to nativepathcompleteprotein.com/joy. Native Path Complete Protein/joy. 100% grass-fed beef protein, not whey, not soy, not plant-based, okay? They don't do that over at Native Path. Only the best for the Joy audience. This is to rebuild strength, maintain muscle support, a fast metabolism with absolutely no bloat whatsoever, because this is the cleanest product, the highest quality product, protein product you can get on the market. It is 110 calories, 20 grams packed with protein, and zero sugar, dairy free, no soy, no gluten. This is an amazing product. 41% off. Next week, we're going to feature some of the Joy family recipes. We use complete protein every day at my house. The kids love the chocolate flavor. Go to nativepathcompleteprotein.com/joy. That's nativepathcompleteprotein.com/joy to get your exclusive 41% off discount. This is just for the Joy audience, but it is going to end soon. So make sure you go to that website today. The Sat123, the satellite phone store, and the amazing team over at this amazing website. It is everything that you need for preparation, everything that you need when the power goes out, when the storm comes, whether it's a generator to keep the power on, solar panels, a satellite phone. If we lose power and the towers go down and 5G, 4G, 3G, it's not working, these satellite phones are absolutely critical in getting in touch with loved ones, and they can actually be a blessing to an entire community. There's so many stories that Tina, the owner and founder of Satellite Phone Store, tells about communities that have one satellite phone that was used to help hundreds of families redirect traffic, direct people to a safe a place, or a place to escape a fire or a natural disaster. I mean, the stories are absolutely amazing. And not only can you protect your own family, but you can also be a blessing to your community when you are prepared. Please go to sat123.com/joy. That is sat123.com/joy. That is my page. And the folks at Satellite Phone Store always have amazing deals for the Shannon Joy audience. 10% off with that promo code JOY. That's 10% off your entire purchase with the promo code JOY. Everything that you need when the lights go out. The Faraday collection, the satellite phones, the generators, you name it, they have it. And we're so thankful for everything that they do for this show. So sat123.com/joy.
Hey guys, we are back. It's always fun filling in for Shannon. We always get some interesting conversations on here. Again, make sure you guys are checking out yesterday's show with Rachel Alexander. I highly encourage you guys to do that. Rachel is a very good friend, and probably to me the most trustworthy when it comes to dealing with election issues and election fraud issues, especially with her background as the Maricopa County elections attorney. So make sure that you guys are checking that out as well. And then definitely go set up an account at pickaxe.com. Make sure you guys are following Shannon Joy. You guys can follow myself. You guys can also follow Karen Kingston over there as well. So make sure you guys are doing that. But Karen, we'll bring it back on. And I kind of want to throw this last topic to you, and then there's a few questions in the live chat that we'll kind of bring up. But RFK Jr. has been talking about how within all the departments within HHS, they are integrating artificial intelligence in ways that they've never done within the government. They're going to be fast tracking FDA approvals. But I think they're going to be eliminating animal testing and replacing it with AI.
Yeah.
There's lots of different things that are happening, but it's all central around the development of artificial intelligence within these health agencies. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How should we be handling that?
I think it's very, very dangerous to replace the traditional animal studies and human studies with artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence has gotten it wrong or has lied to us in the past, right? A lot of people don't understand or didn't know, I should take that, didn't know that Palantir was originally brought in, to do biosurveillance of the COVID-19, not just the outbreak, but then also the biosurveillance of the injections. And so, you know, when you take a look at what we were told regarding the projection of the SARS-CoV-2 quote unquote virus, it was supposed to wipe out millions of Americans, right, in the first few months. And that was completely, absolutely wrong on that note. And then the artificial intelligence was also used for a program called Decipher, which was a biodigital surveillance of the American people, and that started in 2022. And that wasn't just monitoring our cell phones. There's plenty of evidence that the mRNA shots contain technology. So there was surveillance that went under the skin, right? So I think using AI is going to be, um, as well, Peter Thiel says, it's taking risks. And what does taking risks mean? It means sacrificing safety, and sacrificing safety means sacrificing human lives, our lives, for the sake of innovation. And I think that's really what's going on with the AI. And I've known about using AI for clinical trials and replacing of animals for maybe it's 18 years now, because some of my friends went to work for those companies early on, right? It's just been 15 years. And the problem is they're using computer algorithms allegedly to determine whether or not an individual, they call it organ on a chip, like how the human organ, how would respond to a new medication or whatnot, like blood pressure medication. And it just doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work, Jeff, is because you can't use AI and go, okay, here we use this mRNA and we use it for people who have congestive heart failure, when their left ventricle becomes really swollen and hard, so they're not injecting enough blood throughout their system. So now we've got this new mRNA technology that rebuilds the dead cells and the scar tissue in the heart, right? That's so. And then we do the analysis, and there it goes. Oh, it works perfect. It's 100% effective. How do we know that's not true? There is not one drug on the planet where everyone responds in the exact same way, right? So there's so much danger here. And then overriding the animal studies, it is catastrophic. It violates the Nuremberg Code. It violates doing ethical, bona fide research on human beings to skip the animal trials. And that was a law that was passed by Congress, and it was championed by Rand Paul, that they can get rid of animal trials if they knew they were going to go into humans anyway, or it was going to be effective in humans. Why is that so scary? Because there is something called the animal rule that the FDA has. And the animal rule is, if it is, if a company has a product that is too dangerous to experiment on human beings because of the lethality of what it is, they can just do animal trials enough. So this is for the medical countermeasures. They need to do animal trials first, and they're never going to do human trials. So this would be a medical countermeasure. They would go straight to humans because the risk to humans is so high. So what kind of situation would that be? Well, I downloaded the spreadsheet of what these animal trials are, where they would just then go straight to humans. And it was things like the bubonic plague. It was military gases, agents that cause massive deterioration of our nervous system, right? These are things that you're like, why are we even planning this? But again, if they're doing things in animals that are dangerous, like if we skip the animal trials for things for humans, like chronic diseases, and we just use the AI, we don't know what the consequences of that experiment is going to be. And the fact is, they're changing the definition of what life threatening is, right? Like people who, and they're saying everyone has genetic disorder, right? So they're going to say, okay, we have diabetes. That's a life-threatening disease. And I think historically, life-threatening meant you're going to die like in the next couple hours, or weeks, best case scenario, right? That's like but now they're going, life-threatening is obesity, it's diabetes, it's high blood pressure, it's dementia, right? People do die from Alzheimer's, end up getting anorexia. And so if we start using AI now to create these quote unquote therapies, um, it seems like an assault on humanity. And I think one of the other things that's really very concerning is, you know, the last ACIP meeting where they presented the quote unquote safety data on the COVID-19 shots. That data analysis was done by the CDC, the FDA, and the DoD had their logo on it as well. So these products that they're saying AI they want AI to give us the approval to just start injecting humans, whether or not they ever do a phase 1, 2, or 3 trial, they just go straight to humans. These are dual use products that are also weapons. So they're meant to cause death. I mean, keep in mind, what was the SARS-CoV-2 virus start out as? And I say virus. It started out as a vaccine for bats, an aerosolized bat vaccine. I mean, give me a break. It was a weapon.
Totally. Well, yeah, and I'll say this really quick, and then we'll go to a couple questions as we're closing. But I think for me, looking at it from the AI perspective, and I think that it was a perfect example what happened a couple weeks ago with how Grok went full on anti-Semitic and full on like pro Hitler Nazi or whatever it
Yeah.
is I think it showed to me how easy it is to manipulate AI from because you can manipulate it from the front end, but you can also manipulate it from the back end. It all depends on what data you put in, depends on how you code it. And the fact that it could be changed and go so out of control so easily and so quickly that nobody caught it before it went public shows that it's not this like neutral arbiter of truth as I think a lot of people have a caricature of it. Is no, it can be easily manipulated. So when you think about, okay, let's just say the good guys are implementing AI and they're gonna code it perfect, absolutely perfect, totally neutral. What's going to happen if and when Gavin Newsom wins next time around, and the Democrats take over, and then they can code it with certain kinds of bias or to push certain propaganda, or big pharma is paying the bills over at the CDC or the NIH or whatever it is, and then they can do it in order to push it a particular way to approve particular drugs because of X, Y, and Z. Like there's so much potential for abuse by using AI and taking out the human element in here.
Yeah, and regardless of whether or not Gavin Newsom is in office, right? AI lies. I
Yep.
mean, it lies. I'm sure you've caught it lying. I mean, I asked it once to give me like the top 100 podcasts on something, and it was so obviously biased to what it knew, the information that it knew that I followed, right? And that wasn't my question. So it will lie, and I think that's what's so dangerous about using it for the FDA. So if our FDA and HHS says, okay, well, we've got this new mRNA vaccine. It's 100% safe and effective. We have the best AI in the world. We don't know if the AI lied to the Department of Health and Human Services.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's bonkers that anybody think that's okay. So there is a question in the live chat. Mark Therigan asked this question. I think it's a good one that I'd love for you to respond to. And he said, if you don't use AI and you don't let them chip you, is this really an issue for those of us who don't do those things?
Yes, because I guess people are thinking that the chip is literally like a chip that they're going to, like, you have to voluntarily or be forced to have some kind of surgery, maybe it's even outpatient surgery. But even John Stewart just said like a month ago, he was he did this long rant. But he said, he's like, what is that thing? What is that thing? He's like, oh yeah, that chip that Bill Gates injected into all of us during COVID. So people understand that Neuralase is the nanotechnology. It's self-assembling, intelligent technology that can be injected into your body. And it starts, it's not a chip. As Elon Musk explains, it creates another layer, another neural layer, an AI neural layer within your brain and your whole neurological system. So the shots were one way to start building out that system. And another way is, again, by contaminating food, by contaminating other medicine, by through the aerosol spraying. And keep in mind that this technology is not just self-assembling, it's self-amplifying, right? It replicates. And if you go to my Substack, KarenKingston.substack.com, I have a few articles on how the Pfizer documents and BioNTech documents show that they use self-amplifying mRNA in the shots. And Dr. Carrie Madej actually confirmed that with an interview I did with her and Dr. Brian Artis back in 2021. where she a whistleblower from Pfizer from the science from the department came forward and showed her some of those documents. And yeah, so I think people are thinking, should I be concerned about this? Yeah, everyone should be concerned about this. It's not a chip. I think that's another psyop, right? That's
Yeah.
something else that when people think of hijacking the brain, they think it's a chip that they're going to insert in your brain because that's what we've been told. No one's been really it hasn't gone mainstream about Neuralink. That's only in the scientific journals and the tech journals, basically. And by
Yeah.
scientific, I mean industrial, not the journals that your physicians read. I don't mean like JAMA and you know Heart and those journals.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And then Mab 2022 asked, Karen, in your opinion, what is the number one thing that normies need to learn regarding transhumanism and DARPA tech?
The number one thing that normies need to learn regarding transhumanism and DARPA technology that it exists.
Yeah,
I think the first step is acknowledging that the technology even exists, and that that it's not the term. I mean, at least Trump's being honest with us and saying instead of calling it the Department of Defense, the Department of War, these technologies are being developed to wage war on humanity, right? For the objective of enslaving us, entrapping us, or exterminating us. But I think that the number one thing normies need to know is that the technology exists and sharing that information and that it's dual use information. And I think people should be shocked that the DoD showed up at the world's largest lobbying group for biotech, biopharma, and they show up at their convention and dedicated a half day to medical countermeasures and national security. And that's Jeff. That's exactly what you brought up, the role of AI. They're going to say, "Oh, we have an urgency. There's an outbreak of the bubonic plague. We ran these sequences through AI, or AI came up with the sequence. This is what we need to inject into you so that you don't get sick." And they're going to do no human studies, right?
yeah,
Or they're going to say, "Oh, we have this huge onset of dementia and Alzheimer's in people in their 20s and 30s and 40s. It's a national crisis. Here, we ran this through AI. We're going to inject this into you, and it'll cure your dementia." And again, the use of AI, I think by the DoD, DARPA, and HHS, it's more or less developing weapons of mass destruction more than anything else.
totally. Now, and, on that note as well, LT Oracle of Truth asked, do you think humanity has a chance to continue if they deploy self-amplifying mRNA?
They already did. It was in the Pfizer shots, and here, so in you go to my Substack, you can see it in the presentations, you can see it in the Operation Warp Speed contract, you can see it on the NIH website. But don't take my word for it. Even the most prominent leaders in the MAHA movement have said the RNA, the sample, like the people are producing spike protein years out. There was a study done by Yale that Dr. Pumakala cites often, over 700 days out. People are still producing spike protein. That's self-amplifying mRNA. What we were calling mRNA is a biological substance, which, to be quite honest, is so unstable it never even gets to replicate inside the human body. But if they did it with just the uridine and not the pseudouridine and self-amplifying mRNA, it only produces the spike allegedly for a couple hours. So if you're producing it for 7 years out, that is self-amplifying RNA. That is what it is.
Yeah, which is crazy when you think about it, because it's like, we were, gaslit repeatedly by, our own government and big
Yeah.
pharma about all these things. Like, it's totally safe. It's gonna, phase out of your body in a very short period of time. It's not gonna stay in you. We all know that they lied repeatedly, but I feel like there's no repercussions for these lies and for the gaslighting and for the dishonesty. And I think that's the problem with where we're at. And this is one of my biggest frustrations when it comes to what's happening with, both how Kennedy's handling HHS and Trump's handling the Trump administration. Is it feels like nobody's actually holding anybody accountable for the past. Like, some things are coming to light, that's great and that's fine, but when are we actually going to hold people accountable for lying to the American people in order to get this technology injected into them? And it just goes rampant, and it's like nobody's actually held accountable. They can just kind of adjust little things here and there, and then they can just carry on, as if everything's normal.
Yeah, well, I mean, Peterfield basically confessed that the politicians that we thought we elected to be in charge, they were put in charge. They're not calling the shots. It seems like the intelligence agencies, these tech oligarchs, they're all calling the shots. So I think, if anything's going to happen, it has to happen at the local level. So I have, I'm not, I don't wish today to walk in any of those men's shoes that are in the government right now. But it's clear that they're the intentions that they expressed to us, when they were campaigning. Now that they're in there, they're not able to deliver on those promises. Who knows why? But Catherine Austin Fitz has often said that our government's a big organized crime operation, and the guns don't just point out, but they point in, right? So
Mhm.
who knows what's going on there? But I think if you work at the local level, that is your best chance. Um, I see a lot of people passing more and more legislation at the local level to try to protect themselves. But even as you pass laws, if you don't enforce them, then they don't mean anything, right? So you need someone brave enough to actually take action to remove the shots, like at the local level, or you need an attorney general to take such action like that to ban the shots and actually then physically have, his enforcement, whatever enforcement organizations he has access to remove them. So that's what would have to happen. I think it has to all happen at the local level because I don't. I think Jeff, everyone, we don't. Whoever's in, we, whoever we elect, we don't know who's running our government, right? I mean,
Right.
to me, it seems like it's Palantir and the DoD. Certain high end people at the DoD. Like I said, when Trump said at least he wants to change it to the Defense of the Department of War, that tells us. So these biodefense mRNA technologies, they're weapons. They're not for our defense.
Right.
They're not providing any benefit. And they always had to do it under the guise of cancer research because when people with stage 4 cancer, they were almost guaranteed to die soon. So if they died, they didn't attribute it to the mRNA. That's why they used to, or people with very rare, very aggressive and near end stage immune disorders. So even when you hear this chief technology officer of Moderna do his TED talk and he tells this story about this young boy that's dying from this genetic disorder, and thank God they had their mRNA, to try and treat his genetic disorder. Jeff, do you know how the story ends?
No, how's the
He dies. Talzak says
course?
how the boy dies, but
Yeah.
for the sake of science, they got to experiment on him. These people are psychopaths. There
Yeah.
wasn't a happy ending to the story. Tail was happy. I don't know why, because the young boy died.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. So we're coming up to the tail end of the show. So, but I want to make sure that you let everybody know how they can follow you, your Substack, what you're writing about, all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, so you can follow me at the Kingston Report, which should redirect you to my Substack, which is KarenKingston.substack.com. There's a whole bunch of information there if you're interested in learning more about mRNA, the whole history. My Substacks I started posting in 2022. There's some technical things there, and I write about the tech oligarchs a bit too. You'll see I actually pull in. I watch some of the mainstream media. I pull in from like Jon Stewart, The Daily Show. He can actually be quite funny, talking about these things. So there's a lot of information there, and I'll be writing more about the advancement of the mRNA technocracy as it moves forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely, guys. So, guys, make sure you guys are following her on Substack. But Karen, it's always a blast talking to you, and thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's good talking to you too.
Yeah, good talking to you, and then everybody as well. Make sure if you guys do want more information from me or any of my stuff, you guys can go follow me. I do have my own Substack as well, which is jeffdornik.substack.com. But again, I cannot encourage you guys enough. And a little bit self promotional, but hey, it's okay. Go over to pickaxe.com, sign up today. You guys, again, we've got some amazing people that are already over there. Everybody from Children's Health Defense, Naomi Wolf, Daily Clout's already on there. Karen's on there, Shannon's on there, I'm on there. Ann Vandersteel, a bunch of amazing people are already over there. So go over to pickaxe.com, sign up today. The app is coming here in the next couple of weeks. And we're going to be doing a lot in order to have a very human-centered social media platform and find every which way that we possibly can to amplify you guys as opposed to amplifying the technology that all the big tech companies are doing. So make sure you guys are doing that. Check it out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It was an honor to fill in for Shannon these last couple of days. And hopefully we'll see you guys again very, very soon.